Wayne Royster is out this week because we have to send our congratulations to him. His eldest daughter gave birth last night to his first grandchild, and he was yes, yes, yes. You're gonna make me cry if you keep making me listen to babies crying. That's like the one of the sounds in the world that makes my heart clench. Yes, congratulations to Bishop Royster on his first child. I think it was a long night for the family, of course, mostly for his daughter and the baby, but he needed to rest, and he needs to get that baby room in order. I think the baby came earlier than expected, so anyway, we wish him all the best and them all the best. But normally, as you know, he is here. He is the executive director of POWER, which is the state's largest multi-faith, multi-race-based organizing movement with 120 congregations of multiple faith traditions in 13 counties. I am an activist, documentarian, philanthropist, counselor, and coach, as well as consultant. Each week we come to you from 5 to 7, bringing you the organizers, movement, and thought leaders, elected officials, and community members who are creating solutions to the issues that impact your life on the local, state, and national and international levels. And on the board tonight is engineer extraordinaire Troy Wilmore.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
I love that. Creeps me out, but I love it. Thank you, Troy, as always, for capably producing and engineering the show today. We have a special guest later on in the show tonight, a good friend of mine and a professional colleague. Rebecca Subar will be joining us at the 5:40 hour to talk about what is happening in Palestine right now. Rebecca is a longtime activist a Jewish activist, I should say, for Palestinian human rights. And we want to be in conversation with her about what is happening over there. It's a very, in my view, despicable situation that is occurring. And I want to get her perspective as somebody who's been working on this issue for many, many, many years about what the latest activity and violence and terrorism, I would say, that's going on there, what it means and how we should be looking at it. But first, there are a few other critical things going on that I want to dive into. And of course, we welcome you as our primary guests, the listeners, to join in the conversation. So I really encourage you to call in tonight at 215-634-8065 or 1-866-361-0900. You can also listen online at wordradio.com. And of course, we'll be live on Facebook at onWURD and as well as on YouTube and all the social medias that you can think of. So please do join the conversation because I love dialoguing with you all. The first thing, of course, I want to start off tonight with is in the week where we're commemorating or remembering the anniversary of the 1985 MOVE bombing, we have this situation where the health commissioner has been forced to resign because of his role in the disrespectful treatment of the remains of MOVE members who were killed in that bombing. So it was kind of, a few weeks ago we reported on the fact that the Penn Museum had those remains, some remains there, and had been using them. The Professor Mann there had been using them to make videos for classroom instruction using those remains, unbeknownst to members of the MOVE family, which was a disgrace and an insult and extreme disrespect. And so it was just like, you can't even believe how low it goes. When I heard yesterday about the reason the health commissioner was resigning was that, of course, he disposed of additional remains that were at the medical examiner's office in 2017 without thinking that it was appropriate to try to contact the family members and turn over the remains to the family. The mayor put out a statement saying that he asked for his immediate resignation. The mayor's statement says in part, this action lacked empathy for the victims, their family, and the deep pain that the MOVE bombing has brought to our city for nearly 4 decades. The medical examiner has also been placed on administrative leave for his role in this. And did they choose to time it on the 36th anniversary of the MOVE bombing on May 13th for this to come out? I'm not sure why they made that choice, but it's just yet another devastating blow to the MOVE family and to the city, who holds the collective trauma of that experience. Of course, as Black people, we hold that trauma of just the level of disrespect, the level of dehumanization, the way human remains are treated, without any kind of sense that what if this was your own family's remains. And we hold a collective trauma of the bombing itself, and not only the destruction of the MOVE family there, or the attempted destruction of the MOVE family, but also the destruction of an entire community, an entire neighborhood that was caught on fire, and houses burned to the ground in that incident. So I guess the question I have is, how does the family heal? How does the Africa family heal? How do we heal as a city? But how does the Africa family heal? I heard that City Council member Helen Gim called for reparations to be paid to the Africa family. I think that would be a good start. I'm wondering what you think. Please call in and let me know your thoughts about this. What can be done to heal this family? What can be done to heal our city? 215-634-8065. I'll also say that we're coming up on the 100th anniversary, the centennial of the Tulsa riots that happened in 1921. May 31st through June 1st was in 1921 were 48 hours of terror and murder in Tulsa of a thriving Black community there, where bombs were dropped there. And they are still now grappling with that history in Tulsa, and they're discovering human remains there, trying to identify them. And it was something that was kept a secret or kept quiet for many, 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 many years there. How do you heal from historical trauma? How do families like the Africa family recover? What would be proper accountability for the city to demonstrate? At this point, you can't get true justice after such a horrific thing has been done. But what would constitute true accountability Would it be a large reparations settlement or reparations payment? What kind of process do we have to go through to get to that place of healing? I'm curious as to what you think. And it's hard to find, like, how deep do I have to go and to reach for the outrage that one should feel about what has happened here. And I'll just say, back when this health commissioner, who was the one, by the way, that authorized the Philly Fighting COVID group, the group that was led by graduate students at Drexel to run COVID vaccinations in the city, that whole debacle, when he approved that and when he was asked about why he didn't, I remember listening to an interview with him where he was asked about why he did not coordinate with the University of Pennsylvania, Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, who had offered back in the fall to coordinate COVID vaccination distribution. Why he did not take them up on that? His answer was quite lackadaisical and quite, I guess lackadaisical is the word I would use. His attitude was very like, oh, I don't know, I guess we didn't call them back. He didn't really seem concerned about the lack of coordination and planning for distributing the vaccinations. And he also didn't seem that concerned about the disproportionate impact on Black communities for not having good access to the vaccine. And so I didn't really have much respect for him since then. And so to know that he was involved in this, or that he was the one that was in charge of this action, yet another disrespectful action towards the human remains of MOVE members who were bombed, it's not surprising. All right, I see we have Ali in North Philly on. Hi, Ali. Is Ali there? We might have lost Ali. Okay, Ali, give us a call back. If you can, we lost you. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today is just the shift with the CDC rules regarding mask wearing, speaking of vaccinations. We now are allowed, if you're fully vaccinated, as I am fortunately am, we are allowed to not wear masks, seemingly anywhere. Certainly outside, and certainly indoors with other with other vaccinated people. And I guess questions are being raised about this seemingly abrupt shift by the CDC, because there's a concern that people who aren't vaccinated will not wear masks. And how do you know who is vaccinated and who is not vaccinated without asking people for proof of that? And so I, for one, because I have an underlying health condition, I have a rare lung disease, and I'm immunocompromised because of the medication that I am on for my lung disease. I will continue to be careful when I am indoors in public spaces like the grocery store or other public spaces indoors, and also in crowded places outdoors. I think I'm going to continue to wear my mask because I'm concerned about the variants that are out there and whether my vaccine can protect me against all of those variants. I think for some of the variants the vaccine can, but I myself am going to be extra careful. Anyway, so your thoughts on masks coming off, as well as the situation, the latest round of disrespect towards the Move family. I would love to hear you join the conversation. But we're up on our first break, so when we come back, we'll continue this. Ali, give us a call back. Anyone else can join in at 215-634-8065. You're listening to Solutions. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
Good afternoon. A serious problem on 95. Southbound side, it's a vehicle fire on the Girard Point Bridge. We've got the 2 left lanes blocked. Delays go all the way back to Columbus Boulevard. More delays 95 southbound. Long stretch of traffic here. Academy Road to Girard. Northbound backs up Columbus Boulevard to Bridge Street. Schuylkill Expressway, very heavy on the westbound side. University Avenue all the way to Belmont. Eastbound, we back up 202 to Gulf Mills and the Blue Route to Belmont Avenue. Vine Expressway, heavy this afternoon in both directions, the entire length of the Vine. Report brought to you by Smart Mouth, the only 24-hour mouthwash with twice daily use. There's nothing that'll scare your hot date away faster than bad breath. Luckily, Smart Mouth mouthwash has got your back for 24 full hours with 2 rinses a day. Smart Mouth is available anywhere mouthwash is sold, so pick up a bottle today or visit smartmouth.com to learn more. That's smartmouth.com. And for more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Anthony Wright was wrongfully convicted of murder after he spent over 2 decades in prison. DNA exonerated him. In 2016, Carlos Vega re-prosecuted him anyway.
I was in prison, convicted of a crime that I didn't commit. Every single person that was involved was corrupt. I think about Carlos Vega, I think about the devil, I think about racism.
Vote now. Vote Krasner for DA. Paid for by Lawrence Krasner for District Attorney.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio. Messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese. Exclusive articles and multimedia content and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. WURD Radio presents the following information to help you navigate the upcoming election.
This is Charles Ellison of Reality Check and City Council Live. Still feeling a bit worn out from the 2020 election? We're not done yet. 2021 is another important year when locally you have the power to pick Philadelphia's district attorney. Who will it be? The current DA and incumbent Larry Krasner or former assistant DA and challenger Carlos Vega? What we know is this is a closely watched bellwether on the future of issues such as mass incarceration, policing, and public safety. If you want to have a direct say over these issues, simply vote in the upcoming primary on May 18th. If you have your mail-in ballot, you can vote by mail starting May 11th. More information can be found at the Philadelphia City Commissioner website, phillyvotes.com. Continue to follow @onWURD and #WordOnPolitics for analysis and updates while tuning in to WURD Radio for special election coverage. Don't talk about your vote, cast it.
Stay informed and vote. For more from Charles Ellison, tune in Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. or visit wordradio.com. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions on WURD. This is Amadi Braxton. In this week, flying solo, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Bishop Dwayne Royster is a granddad. He had a baby. His daughter had a baby boy, I think, last night. He was up all night, worried, stressed out, but the baby is fine, and the mother is recovering, and we wish them well. Before the break, we were discussing the resignation of Health Commissioner Farley. And I just want to give a little bit of the statement that he made. Mayor Kenney has opened an investigation. I guess they've hired an outside law firm to investigate exactly what happened here. My sense is that they knew this for a while, but they decided to announce it yesterday. It sounds like with the that the Africa family requested that the announcement be made publicly. Let's see. Farley said, he said his decision was a terrible error in judgment, and one that he had reconsidered in the wake of news reports regarding Penn and Princeton having some of the remains of the moved children in their possession, that jogged his memory and made him rethink what he had done. He says that believing that the investigations related to the MOVE bombing had been completed more than 30 years earlier, and not wanting to cause more anguish for the families of the victims, I authorized Dr. Giulino being the medical examiner, to dispose of the bones and bone fragments, Farley said. I made this decision on my own without notifying or consulting anyone in the managing director's office or the mayor's office, and I take full responsibility for it. Now, he's alluding to a policy, he alludes to a policy later in the statement where that's a standing policy where any investigation that has been completed, they dispose of the remains without contacting anyone, without notifying the family members. And Mayor Kenney says that he is going to consider changing that policy for handling remains because he thinks it's wrong. So, what do you think of his statement? What does it mean? Let's go to Rick in Germany. Hi, Rick.
How you doing today, Doctor?
I'm doing fine.
I wanted to comment on the CDC's reversal of the mask.
Okay.
I think it's too soon to tell people that they can take off the mask. I'm full of underlying conditions myself, 3 to be exact, and I don't expect to last the next 3 years here in Germany. Wow. But I think it's too soon to start telling people to take away the mask.
Even if people are vaccinated, I mean, it was really saying vaccinated people only should take the mask off. But what's your concern about?
That's not what's going to be communicated to the larger public. They're going to see people remove the mask, and everybody is going to want to imitate that, especially people who are refusing to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I think that is what the concern is. Like, people have been desperate to get their masks off for months and months and months and months now. And so the first word that for some people it's okay, many people will take that as a green light, right, for them to also take off the mask.
I think you should also highlight what's going on in India.
Yes, there is very, very serious COVID situation in India right now. We haven't spent enough time talking about it. I know that friends of mine who have family in India are very, very preoccupied with the situation there, have family members dying or falling ill, friends of family dying or falling ill. One person told me that even people who have been vaccinated there by the vaccines that India produced have died from COVID, that they're not protected. And I read an article a week ago that talked about The particular variant that has cropped up in India that they think is the most virulent strain is what they call a double mutation variant, where it actually contains two different kinds of mutations in a single version of the virus that is overwhelming people's immune systems. What have you been hearing? Is Rick still there? I guess Rick's gone. Yeah, the situation in India is very serious, and I guess the question is, before I get to the question, I just want to say that part of the situation there, many say, is being created by the fact that the government really slacked off too soon in upholding very stringent guidelines to protect the public. They began, they had, I guess, during an earlier wave of the virus in the fall there, they got it under control and then kind of took their foot off the brakes or the gas. I don't know what's the right metaphor, but that there were some very large political gatherings because it's an election year there. It was some very large traditional, during that time of year, religious gatherings were allowed to happen where you have thousands and thousands of people coming together. And that created a situation that allowed mutations of the virus and variants of the virus to proliferate. And we have the situation that we have now. I'll also say that from the reporting I've heard, because I listen to the BBC often and I listen to other global news, the case counts there, people in India feel are largely undercounted because the government really does not want to look bad. And I should just say that the Modi government, Modi being the prime minister in India right now, is a I would call a fascist regime. They are not interested in anything that makes them look bad. They're only interested in portraying themselves as good. They have had an all-out campaign against Muslims and other minorities in India. They are a Hindu nationalist party that's controlling the government, and they're promoting Hindu nationalism throughout the country and creating hell for many of the other people, non-Hindu people in India right now, particularly the poor and people of religious and ethnic minorities to Hinduism. So I feel like under that kind of a government, you're going to get these kinds of situations. And it's really, really horrific what's happening there. I think it's starting to get a little bit better, but it's still pretty bad. Thank you, Rick, for bringing that to our attention. Calvin in Delaware.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Hi. How are you?
Good. This whole thing with this COVID thing, it still kind of worries me. I think it's just still too early to be taking your mask off. And I just think that it's just going to be some issues with that. Like you were saying earlier, you have people, or the previous caller said, you have people who have been fully vaccinated. I mean, I've been fully vaccinated. And the thing about these vaccines, they only last like 6 months to a year. And now they're saying that, like next year you may have to take a booster shot, and then this whole thing with the variants and what's happened over there in India, and then, some people who may have been vaccinated and, turn around and still got COVID, So, I just think it's just too early. I just think it's just too early to be doing that,
Yeah.
I mean, because you have people out here who don't want to be vaccinated, black people, white people, like some Trump supporters,
Right.
and like people, and I just think, and also this whole thing with like, when you look at this on TV, I mean, this whole thing is about pushing the businesses. I mean, I get it, businesses want to, they want to open up because of, losing money the last year, and then people have this COVID fatigue. But, it's just like,
I just still think it's just too early, you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, some in the
well,
business community, I've heard, you know, in the news in the last 24 hours since this announcement came out by the CDC, that they were kind of caught off guard by this, some people are saying that they should have actually slowly moved towards this because it would give businesses time to make adjustments in terms of their own policies and practices and figure out what their own rules were going to be and how they were going to accommodate this shift.
Yeah.
So I think businesses would have liked a little bit more time to make the adjustment themselves. And some of them are still probably not going to want people in their stores without masks because they have to protect themselves, they have to protect their workers, and they want to protect other customers. What do you think about children being vaccinated now? I know I spoke to so any children 12 and up can be vaccinated now, and a friend of mine that I spoke to today, both of her children who are in middle school got vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna be like mandatory that they have to be vaccinated when they get back to school. I mean, is that going to be?
Not sure.
Like some of the colleges are doing that. You have to be vaccinated in order to actually be in the classroom. So I don't know. I just think a lot of this stuff is really kind of like, too soon. I was looking at CNN and they were saying on there that, this variant that's over in India, 3 states here in America, the variant is there. So I just think it's just too soon,
Yeah, and the problem another problem or dynamic that we have to contend with is the fact that, so if you have all these different, particularly in red states, but I think in every state you have these pockets of, you have people who aren't getting vaccinated or who don't want to be vaccinated. That is the very thing that leads to the proliferation of mutations and these variant strains of the virus.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So people think like, oh, I'm just doing me. I'm not going to get vaccinated. It doesn't affect anybody but me. No, actually, it affects us all because you are contributing to a situation where variants and mutations can flourish, and that impacts everybody.
I mean, because, people are just being selfish. But like what you also were saying, this thing with the red states, like, I was looking on CNN and they were saying how some of these Republican governors are cutting unemployment benefits, some of them as early as June the 10th, because they feel that, because of these businesses and everything don't have any workers, so they're just thinking that, people don't really need this extra money, But that's going to be another issue. That's going to be another issue coming down the pipe. You just see it, But,
Yeah, and my thing is, so, I think they keep talking about it in the context of restaurant workers in particular, but I think a lot of other workers where people don't get high wages, right? For them, for the workers, collecting unemployment in some cases pays them more than they were making working full time, right?
Yeah,
and so the answer isn't to cut off the unemployment to force them back to the job. The answer to me is to raise their wages.
Absolutely.
At the job.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
A livable wage.
Exactly.
That's what they need to do. But, but anyway, I just wanted to just say those things, and thanks for the time.
Okay. Appreciate your call. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think some excellent points there, and I'm curious if you, people in your family, especially young people, which I think is a critical population of folks to get the vaccine because, they are more apt, I think, to want to socialize. They're going to school now, many of them, and more, I mean, I think early on they were saying, the virus doesn't impact children as much as it does elders, but I think more and more we're seeing that shift. And so I think it's really great that, we have situations where the adults in the family have gotten vaccinated, but their kids aren't. And now the whole family can be vaccinated. Of course, the children have to be 12 and older, but I think that's a positive development. But yeah, I think in terms of I too heard news, I think on NPR about these different states wanting to end unemployment benefits early, basically stop taking the federal money that has been provided to them to have extended unemployment benefits. And yeah, I think, like I just said, the answer is not to stop unemployment. The answer is raise people's wages so that they can. I mean, I think there's plenty of people who want to go back to work, but it's like, it's a cost-benefit analysis. It's like, do I go back to work and then have to pay for childcare and work for wages where I can't actually make ends meet? Or do I stay home, take care of my own children, and collect enough money that I can actually get by in a respectable, dignified way? People's wages need to be raised. People's working conditions need to be improved. You know, I think some of the meat packing plants, like the poultry plants, are places where they're having trouble getting workers back in. And some of the working conditions in those plants is horrific. So they need to work on raising those people's wages and getting better working conditions. I mean, those were the places where the virus was proliferating at times because people were being forced to work very close together and not being given enough PPE. Anyway, before we go to a break, I want to let you know that the time now is 5:41 and the temperature is 76 degrees. Wow, 76 degrees. This time and temperature check is sponsored by SEPTA. From safe to seamless, convenient to contactless, and local to express, SEPTA is the Philly way to go. Plan your trip at iseptaphilly.com. You're listening to Solutions. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
Good afternoon. A serious problem on 95. Southbound side, it's a vehicle fire on the Girard Point Bridge. We've got the two left lanes blocked. Delays go all the way back to Columbus Boulevard. More delays 95 southbound. Long stretch of traffic here. Academy Road to Girard. Northbound backs up Columbus Boulevard to Bridge Street. Schuylkill Expressway, very heavy on the westbound side. University Avenue all the way to Belmont. Eastbound, we back up 202 to Gulf Mills and the Blue Route to Belmont Avenue. Vine Expressway, heavy this afternoon in both directions, the entire length of the Vine. Report brought to you by Smart Mouth, the only 24-hour mouthwash with twice daily use. There's nothing that'll scare your hot date away faster than bad breath. Luckily, Smart Mouth mouthwash has got your back for 24 full hours with 2 rinses a day. Smart Mouth is available anywhere mouthwash is sold, so pick up a bottle today or visit smartmouth.com to learn more. That's smartmouth.com. And for more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
From safe to seamless, convenient to contactless, and local to express, SEPTA is the Philly way to go. Plan your trip at iseptaphilly.com. Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing sites at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. A second testing location has been added at Richard Allen Preparatory Charter School. Testing is on Wednesdays and Fridays. For testing hours and more information, visit jeffersonhealth.org/community testing. From safe to seamless, convenient to contactless, and local to express, SEPTA is the Philly way to go. Plan your trip at iseptaphilly.com.
Tune in to Save Space with Sincerely Sarita, Mondays at 8 p.m. discussing financial literacy tips with certified financial advisor Joanna Jane. Brought to you by AARP Philadelphia, exclusively on WURD Radio and WURD TV. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is Amadi Braxton. Bishop Dwayne Royster is out celebrating the birth of his first grandchild. Yay. I'd like to now shift the conversation to, from time to time we do talk about international news, and it feels important to me to talk about what's happening right now in what I like to call Israel-Palestine territory in the Middle East. There is an all-out war happening there, it seems like, and I want to invite my good friend Rebecca Subar into the conversation to help us understand what's happening there. Rebecca is a longtime activist for Palestinian human rights, a peace and conflict studies scholar and practitioner, and a good friend of mine and a professional colleague who I work with fairly often. Most of my Zoom calls during a week involve Rebecca Subar. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Amadi. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you for agreeing to be on short notice. I really appreciate it. I wanted to talk about this week because, of course, we've been seeing on the news this whole week, really since Monday, I think it came into the consciousness of many of us over here in the U.S., the fact that the Israeli forces have been in an all-out assault against Palestinians. And I think the way it's being portrayed in the media quite often is this kind of, false equivalencies, like the, Palestinian militants are sending all these rockets and the Israelis are responding in kind with their warplanes and dropping bombs. But I want to just kind of provide some perspective for our listeners about what's happening. And I know that this all began, it began many, many decades ago, but in terms of the latest situation, there was Israeli forces raided Al-Aqsa Mosque and terrorized people who were praying in there during this holy period of Ramadan, and over 300 people were wounded, and that created this reaction that has spiraled out of control. Tell us a little bit about what we need to understand about what is happening or what has unfolded over the past week.
Well, that's really good background. So after the Palestinian people praying in the mosque, coming close to the Eid holiday, which I'm sure some listeners celebrate, there was outrage among Palestinians. The timing of the raid on the mosque was really sensitive, obviously, but it also came on the heels of this attempted forced displacement of over 60 people from their community in East Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, which I'm not pronouncing correctly, so apologies to Arabic speakers. But there was this threat and attempt, and then ultimately reality of the forced displacement of this set of people on completely bogus grounds. It's sort of a continuation of the ongoing, as you said, Amadi, the occupation which has been in place since 1948, but this forced displacement of Palestinians from their homes coming at this time in Ramadan was just this. It just made it all the more insulting on top of terrorizing. And Palestinian forces in Gaza, under the political and military party Hamas, sent weak rockets into Israel. That is the strongest location of military force among Palestinians, Gaza is. And the Gaza Strip's right adjacent to southern Israel. And by weak rockets, I mean that doing their best, they killed, or what they would consider their best, they killed 2 people in Israel, one of whom was an Israeli Jew, and the other one of whom was what Israel describes as a foreign worker, a person from India, who had a job as a carer for an older woman, and she was killed. Israel then returned fire disproportionately with one of the most powerful militaries in the world, like as if somebody threw a rock and somebody bombed them in return. This is what Israel does. So this powerful military backed by the U.S. then begins to drop bombs over the Gaza Strip, and an entire building is destroyed, a building where over 80 families live. The first 20-some people are killed, and among them 9. Listen, that's like a third. The people who were killed were children under 16. And Israel says that it was intending to kill military leaders of Hamas. They missed. if that's what they were trying to do. So that's just sort of the facts of the case. And then there's one other thing that's important to know about, which is that Palestinians living in Israel are rising up to protest, which is unusual. There's a sharp crackdown on those Palestinians, which is spiraling out of control in many cities, so that many of the residents, both Israeli Jewish and Palestinian Arab, are getting into fist fights on the street. There are mobs fighting each other, and the police and military are storming the houses of some of the Palestinian Arabs who are being involved in some of these fights. And in some cases, there have been reports of Israeli Jewish civilians not only cheering the police on, but reports of them joining them to storm Arab houses too. So that's almost like what's the sort of on the ground what's happening.
Right. And the context for this too, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that part of, the larger context is the ongoing forced displacement and evictions of Palestinians. And, what you alluded to earlier was the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in East Jerusalem being the site of these proposed evictions. That is part of a larger pattern that really is the history of Israeli occupation in that area.
Absolutely.
But it's been accelerated, it seems, under the Netanyahu government.
It absolutely has. And so that's a good question. So, why now, right? What's going on now? Well, the occupation is absolutely ongoing. Since 1948, Israel has owned and operated land that had been occupied by Palestinians, although has ongoingly been owned and operated by one government of one country or another, but rarely, if ever, by the Palestinian Arabs who live there. So there's a long story of occupation, and Israel became the occupying force in 1948. The evictions are absolutely directly tied to that occupation. And 1948 is what the Palestinians call the Nakba, or the Great Catastrophe. And I was raised in a Zionist Jewish community with loving parents who had terrible politics. And what I learned was that 1948 was something to celebrate because Jews, especially Jews who had been terrorized in a whole bunch of countries, got to celebrate their own leadership in their own country. But that's kind of like the story of Europeans coming to the U.S. And terrorizing indigenous communities and importing Africans to become slaves and terrorizing them. It's very comparable because you have sort of people who are terrorized elsewhere terrorizing. And this was a very specific instance in Sheikh Jarrah of dozens of Palestinian families who were kicked out of Israel in 48 and who have lived in Sheikh Jarrah, who were squatting and then who were given houses by the then Jordanian government who was sort of owning and operating their land from 1948 till 1967. And during that time, they came to actually own these properties. So that was the understanding. That was supposed to be the way that it was, so that they would have a place to live. And now there are a bunch of right-wing nationalist Israeli Jewish settlers who claim this land as their own, with basically nothing to back them up. The Israeli courts don't hear the Palestinian claims. They do hear the Israeli Jewish claims, and this moment is particularly kind of on fire because Trump sort of lit a special flame that helps it be on fire, right? So he had these terrible policies. U.S. administrations have always had terrible policies that target Palestinians and support Israel, but because of his terrible policies, the Biden administration through like a whole series of political backs and forths, the Biden administration happens to be left with a little leverage on Netanyahu right now. And usually it's the U.S. that says, hey, friends in Israel, Palestine, why don't you guys just like come to the table and negotiate? But right now, Netanyahu feels, like you said, Amadi, free reign to do whatever he wants. And on top of that, there are internal political struggles for the Palestinian president and the Israeli prime minister. And on top of that, the movement for Black Lives, and especially the post-George Floyd protests last summer, have given the U.S. Popular conversation way more space to be supportive of Palestinians. So the dynamics are really different than they have been ever before. Some things haven't changed, but this is a new opportunity for Israel to act and a new opportunity for us to push back.
To say a little bit more about how the movement for Black Lives, you feel, has created more space for us to act on behalf of Palestinian human rights. I don't know if that's exactly what you were saying. That was my takeaway, but talk a little bit about that, because I think that, you know, we are very focused on what's happening here in the States around the movement for Black Lives and how that matters here and how it has shifted the narrative here for, you know, issues around policing, issues, you know, all the racial justice issues that we focus on, you know, day in and day out here. But how does it play internationally and in a context like with Palestinian human rights from your vantage point?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, Amadi, because as you know, I've spent a bunch of time in Northern Ireland, and in Northern Ireland, the Catholic nationalists and Republicans and their supporters have, like, over many years, taken the Palestinian cause as kind of like a twin cause, and they've also taken the cause of African American liberation as a twin cause. And I think that's because of a sort of just an international set of connected movements, which have always, you know, been there, but we don't always notice them or pay attention. But especially now with the kind of connectivity we have, let me see if I can find this great quote from a story of this Palestinian guy. I don't think I can find it right now, but let me just tell you this great story. This Palestinian guy was at a protest. I think it was a George Floyd protest, and there was a guy in there was a black guy who was protesting who had a Palestinian flag, and the Palestinian guy was at this protest too, and he was like, "Yo, why do you have my flag? It's very cool, but why do you have my flag?" And the black guy answered, "Because this is our intifada. This is our using the language of Palestinian protest." And the black guy said to the Palestinian guy, "What are you doing in our protest?" And he said, "Because this is our racist struggle. This is our anti-racist struggle." And the links have become very strong, especially because there have been delegations of African-American activists, black activists, since Michael Brown and the Black Lives Matter movement starting in 2014. There have been delegations of black American activists going to Palestine, learning, forming very strong ties with Palestinian activists. But I should flag that Angela Davis and other black activists have been very powerful advocates for the Palestinian cause for a long time. So it's not brand new, but
right?
It's certainly been elevated. And there's one other thing, Amadi, which is that because of social media and because of the uprising for Black Lives last summer, this moment is like so Black Lives Matter's Twitter has more than 1 million followers, right? And Black Lives Matter is protesting Israel's action. And there was a demonstration, was it yesterday, the day before, in Washington, D.C., with, maybe you know the numbers. I don't know the numbers, but it was way more people who would show up to anti-Israel protest in Washington, D.C. on a weekday than like there has ever been before. So both from a philosophical point of view, from a solidarity point of view, and from a organizing point of view, things are different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, gosh, I feel like we're just getting into it, but we have to go now. And this is a great short preview of what hopefully we can have you back on to talk further about this. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thanks, Amadi. You rock.
All right.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Solutions, and on the other side of this break, you can call in with your thoughts on the conversation we just had with Rebecca Subar. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Philly Congressman Brendan Boyle, reminding you to please get your COVID-19 vaccine. Remember, the vaccines are free, safe, and the best way to protect you and your loved ones from COVID-19. And if your vaccine requires a second shot, please don't skip it. It's just as important as the first. If you want more information, you can email me at brendanboyle@mail.house.gov. Remember, Philly, our best shot at beating COVID is through the vaccine.
Paid for by official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Yo, listen up. Hers is making Philly victory even sweeter this year. This season, when Philly wins, you win too, in more than just one way. To participate, here's all you have to do. Follow Hers on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Stay tuned during select home games this season. When our teams win, you get a chance to score some exciting post-game prizes, like hats, autographed memorabilia, and more. When Philly breaks out the win, break out the Hers. Prizing while supplies last.
Philadelphia, it's State Representative Joanna McClinton. The stakes in this year's district attorney's race couldn't be higher. For decades, the DA's office devastated black communities through brutal punishment while never holding police accountable. DA Larry Krasner has changed that in just 3 short years, while his opponent spent 35 years relentlessly pushing the policies that destroyed our communities. We cannot let him take us back. We have everything to lose. We must keep moving forward. Vote now, vote early, vote Krasner for DA on May the 18th.
Paid for by Krasner for DA. Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is your host this week, Amadi Braxton. Bishop Dwayne Royster is off, as you have heard, celebrating the birth of his first grandchild. Very interesting conversation with my friend and colleague, Rebecca Subar, who is a longtime activist for Palestinian human rights. And we kind of, aside from kind of talking about the contours of the current situation and the current escalation that is happening, and mentioning, we didn't even get deeply into this, but, the U.S.'s complicity, right? Because the U.S. funds, provides military aid to the tune of billions of dollars to the government, I should say the right-wing apartheid-style government of Israel, which, so it's like our money, our tax dollars are paying for those bombs to be dropped on high-rise buildings housing Palestinian families right now. We got into at the end there just the power of solidarity and how Black Lives Matter it has taken up the cause of Palestinian human rights. I know that in their platform, this was maybe a couple of years back when they were developing their platform, there was so-called controversy because they actually named Palestinian human rights as part of what they were, supporting. And there was a lot of backlash against that from supporters of Israel who otherwise might be sympathetic to the movement for Black lives, but don't want any criticism of the Israeli government. So it's worth noting that. But I think it's interesting to see how the Black liberation struggle has historically been a beacon and an example in other parts of the world, and the ways that we can build on that legacy to promote human rights globally today is really, really important. So, and I'll just say in my own kind of personal experience, my father always, I would watch the news with my father when I was young, when I was a teenager growing up, and we would kind of talk about it together and process what was going on. And I remember during a period where there was a lot of turmoil and violence among Palestinians and Israelis, and he talked about the plight of the Palestinians as a human rights issue, but as a racial justice issue, and always. So I always grew up with this sense of natural solidarity with Palestinians for the struggle that they're in, and always kind of considered them my siblings across the way, across the world. So you can join the conversation at 215-634-8065 or 1-866-361-0900. I'd like to hear what you think about what's happening with the escalation and the violence and what is being termed by some as all-out war that's happening right now over there, and what we can be doing about it, what we should be calling for. This is in large part being fueled by our tax dollars. What should the Biden administration be doing? Should there be a false equivalency game that weak rockets, as Rebecca termed them, which I think is an apt description, weak rockets on one side, which, by the way, are intercepted by state-of-the-art technology that allows the Israeli military to intercept about 85% of those weak rockets before they ever land. That is not an equivalency to high-tech, very powerful bombs being dropped in precision ways by the Israeli military, Israeli jet fighters. It's quite a different thing. And of course, it's always reflected in the disproportionate casualties on the Palestinian side. I don't have the latest numbers of the casualties, but I could find them. And this is a pattern. This is a historic pattern. You'll hear on the Israeli Defense Force side them saying, well, we are killing children because the Palestinian terrorists use children as human shields, and that's against human rights law. But you're bombing residences with planes. Anyway, I'm getting hyped now. Let me chill out a little bit and invite some space for you to join in the conversation. What else was the other thing I wanted to talk about? Election Day is coming up. We have Maurice. Maurice from Southwest. What's on your mind?
I like how you jump from topic to topic to keep our minds always rolling. I'm still impressed with you when you wrote that article about standing outside waiting for your COVID shot. I thought that'd take a lot of courage and heart to go against the system and tell the truth. I really appreciate that, because a lot of people, they know it was wrong, but they just went along to get along. And as you know, when I call you guys, I never even want to get along for nothing.
I know that goes against your nature, Maurice.
That's why, because I've been around too long. I've been around. I was on that block when MOVE was bombed. I was there. And I hear all these fantasy stories that people come on this radio station and tell that's not true. And it just kills me how nobody really wants to interview the people that actually lived in the neighborhood and ask them about MOVE. All they doing when they talk about MOVE is hearing what somebody told them. But they never talk to people that actually experienced the MOVE experience. I mean, people that thought they were middle class, but they weren't. But they kept that was a nice neighborhood. Everybody ate at 6 o'clock. Everybody knew each other's neighbors. Everybody was a bunch of black stores and communities right on the outskirts. You go across the park, you was in Darby or Yaden. You know what I mean? But they only tell from one side of view, telling us on how good, the Africans were great people and they were fighters. A lot of people didn't think that way. I'm not saying they were bad people, but a lot of people's opinion wasn't that. People just go along to get along. Now, when you talk about Black Lives Matter with the want to take on the Palestinian cause, they got a lot of nerve. You know why I say a lot of nerve? Not because I don't feel for the Palestinian people, but when you on a plane and you got your kids, what's the first thing they tell you to do when them oxygen things fall down?
Put on your mask.
Put on your mask because you're no good if you can't help your children, right? If you pass out, you can't help your children. So you need to put your mask on first, then help them so you can aid them. That's the same thing with Black Lives Matter. They could be so much bigger than waiting for assault from a police officer. They could have been out getting the vote out. They could have been out making sure that we got employment and housing. They could be taking up them causes, but we only hear about. I wanted to join, but every time I ask how I join, it's like an exclusive club. I don't know. I don't know who to talk to. If I'm not going out there going against cops and stuff, then they really don't want to see what I'm doing. You know, I would have Black Lives Matter down every Thursday at City Council, asking how come we're not getting what we deserve. But I don't see them down there. I don't see them out here going, especially out here in Southwest where I live at, going around knocking on doors. Are you going to vote? Are you going to vote? Are you going to vote? Sometimes people need a push. I don't see that. And, you know, all they talk about is when you hear about them is when a cop does something crazy. And that's it's not a lot of cops that do it, but we do have a lot of rogue cops in Philadelphia because of McNesby. But what I'm saying is, won't the Black Lives Matter be more what I thought they was going to be? You understand what I mean by that?
Yeah. You want them to be the new Black Panthers?
Yeah, well, you know,
or something like that. I'm not talking about the new Black Panther Party, but I'm just saying something that's like a grassroots.
Something like that, because they could actually do that. They could promote. You know how we say, "Shop black, go buy your gifts and things from a black store." The problem is trying to find a black store. Because we don't have them. In Southwest, I can walk 20 blocks from my house in any direction and can't find a black-owned store. That's the problem. I want to I had to go all the way. I live on 60th in Springfield. I had to walk all the way over to 52nd and Spruce and find the black bookstore to spend some money in because I wanted to spend my money on a black business. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. So I want to cut it short, but you're doing such a great job by yourself. Maybe you should get an extra show.
Thank you, Maurice. I appreciate that. I'll comment about your comments on the other side. We do have another caller I want to get to. Let's go to Cornelius in San Francisco. Hi, Cornelius.
Hi. This is a great show.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. I really am glad that you're talking about, you had a guest talking about Israel-Palestine. I see the situation as a colonial situation, and I mean, kind of directly, it's classic colonialism. And I don't think the U.S. should be giving aid to Israel, and certainly not without any conditions. You don't just give money to people when they're violating human rights. So there's that. But the thing I really see in the news reports, and something that we can all learn, is the way news reports use language. And they'll say clashes and conflict. And when a security force or the police are armed and using that on unarmed demonstrators, I don't think that's clashes. I mean, people are resisting. So and I think we can all learn from that because, certainly black movements have been tarred with language that indicates that, people are being violent and when people are standing up for their rights.
And I think it's that false equivalency thing again. It's like yeah, clashes implies that there's an equal force on both sides when there's really not. Just like the rockets being shot by Hamas on one side and the response of the Israeli military on the other side, that's not an equivalency. Yeah, I totally hear that, and I'm constantly listening for that in the news coverage because they fall into that too often. It really, really bothers me.
Hmm. And they get exercised when, oh, well, now it's really a war. Before, when people were going, well, Palestinians were being humiliated by going on, having to deal with checkpoints, to get from a few blocks,
mm-hmm.
And trying to go to the hospital, all those kind of things. But that's not serious. And now it's serious when Israel is feeling attacked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's my feeling. And I'm glad that you had this show and you had people talking about this too.
Thank you so much, Cornelius, for calling in. I really appreciate you tuning in.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yep, I think 100% agree with Cornelius. I want to go back to what Maurice was saying, though. First point about the neighborhood that was also destroyed by the fire that came after the bomb was dropped. There's actually a great film made by a friend of mine who I'll have to have come on the show, named Louis Messiah, who I think has been on WURD before, which is called The Bombing of Osage Avenue, which documents what happened and starts by interviewing all of the people in the neighborhood who lived there and who had what you were just describing, Maurice, like a very nice middle-class sensibility, nice homes that people were really proud of, that they took care of, a good sense of neighborhood camaraderie. And they talk about how they were often annoyed by the presence of the MOVE house on their block because of the noise and because of some of the conditions that they felt were being contributed to by the MOVE family there. But they never ever expected or were asking for a bomb to be dropped that would kill people. So there is a great film. It's called The Bombing of Osage Avenue. Google it. It gives you a real thorough history of what happened, both from the perspective of I guess mainly from the perspective of the people who lived on that block. So I think it's a really well done film. Related to the movement for Black Lives, I think that they're still a relatively young organization. I think it's fine for them to have support for Palestinian human rights on their political platform, which contained a number of items. Most of them were domestic issues that they were lifting up on their platform, but they have a right to talk about other serious human rights issues. And part of it is that the U.S., claims to be a supporter of human rights, yet it has denied human rights here to Black people and others whose rights are violated, right, by the police, through institutionalized white supremacy, by, all these historic practices against us and others. Yet we are supposed to be upholding human rights around the world. And then you have us supporting countries and supporting wars where people's human rights are being violated, but we're indirectly or sometimes directly, like as in the case in what's been happening in Yemen. Although I think when Biden came in, the U.S. maybe pulled back from that, but Trump was all for supporting what was going on in Yemen. So I think it's fair for any domestic political group who is calling for human rights for black people to also call for human rights elsewhere and to demand that the U.S. live up to that tenet, both at home and abroad. And I'll just say the one last thing in terms of foreign policy in the U.S. That is our money. When they talk about, oh, we don't have money for our schools, we don't have money for proper health care for everybody, we can't have a national health care system because we don't have the money, that would be too expensive. How expensive is it for us to be occupying Afghanistan for 20 years, bombing Iraq, sending billions of dollars to the Israeli military? All of this war making is very expensive. All of this violation of human rights globally is very expensive. Not only is it immoral, it is unethical, and it is impractical for us when we have things that we have to do at home. Maurice, that was a shout out to your putting on our own mask first. When we come back, we're going to hear from Samaz in North Philly. You're listening to Solutions. We'll be right back.
We do all we can to ensure our kids are happy, healthy, safe, and strong. Having high-quality, low-cost health insurance helps make that possible. With CHIP, your child can have medical, dental, eye care, and more for free or low cost. Whether you're self-employed, unemployed, or your employee benefits are just too expensive, CHIP is there for you to help your child be strong. CHIP Strong. Apply or renew today at 800-986-KIDS or go to chipcoverspakids.com.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
This Word Wellness Vignette is brought to you by Keystone First. Word Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
This is Halana, your resident expert health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Let's talk about your choice not to smoke. Now, of all the healthy lifestyle choices you can make, this could be the most important. Did you know that smoking causes cancer, heart disease, and even type 2 diabetes? Smoking is also responsible for upwards of 440,000 American deaths per year. Here's the thing. When you smoke, it becomes difficult for the blood in your body to flow freely, often leaving you tired and cranky. It also contributes to the decrease in circulation, which can severely affect your immune system. In a time where we need our immune system to be in tip-top shape to keep us healthy and safe, choosing not to smoke is one of the best choices you could make. Commit to living smoke-free today and boost your immune system in as little as 1 day. Let's choose to strengthen our immune systems, improve our lung function, and decrease our risk for stroke or heart attack by not smoking. Choosing not to smoke is something we can all do to support our overall personal and community health. Go ahead, commit today. Stay well with WURD. Happy, healthy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. This Word Wellness Vignette was brought to you by Keystone First. For more information, visit KeystoneFirstPA.com. Tune in every Saturday at 6 p.m. to Recovery Talk 101 with your host, Rick Ford, talking about addiction, treatment, and recovery, right here on WURD Radio. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions with Amani Braxton. We'll hopefully have Bishop Dwayne Royster back next week. He'll have a week of getting to know his new grandchild. So again, congratulations to him. Let's go to Samaz in North Philly. And please let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Okay. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thank you very much, number one, for all you're doing and for having a young lady on to speak about the Palestinian issue. As regards to that, I believe all that began again when we started having the boycott of South Africa, Sun City, where these people were discriminating over there and doing this stuff, and it ran over into the Palestinian issue and everything else that's going on today, right? So, like the lady was speaking in 1948, you know, they put those people over there and took the Palestinian land. They've been doing it ever since then. In 1967, they had the Six-Day War, right, backed by the United States, and they went over there with Six-Day War over there. They crushed those countries over there. We give $6 billion a year. It's probably up to $15 billion every year annually to Palestine for this stuff, right? And they're bombing these houses, bombing these people. There's no proper hospital.
To Israel. We give the support to Israel.
Yeah, sorry about that. We give it to Israel every year. I hope I didn't say Palestinian, but we don't give anything to Palestine. So we give it to Israel every year, $6 billion in military support, and then we give them other aid also, right? And it's basically when we see Russia and anybody else transgressing other particular countries in Syria and all these things in Afghanistan, we get up in arms. We about ready to do something and put these sanctions against these people, but we will not put one sanction against Israel. We won't take no sanction against these people, and they say they have the right to self-determination and self-protection, but not with my money, not with taxpayers' money. You can't kill and commit bombings and all these atrocities that's going over there with my money. Of course, there was an atrocity and horrendous what the Germans and everybody did to them, but now these people have taken up the same savagery against other people who have done against them, and they're doing it with weaponry now. It's terrible. As far as that's concerned, now I want to move on to the move situation, right?
Yes.
And I take issue with the other young man was saying that one thing doesn't align with the other, and they do. Now, we have to support people what's right around the world. African Americans and black people, we were discriminated against, enslaved and taken advantage of and hung and lynched and all these things. So when we see this happen with anybody else, we need to help, not just say, get my house in order. Until then, I'm not going to do anything until I get my home in order. Not the way we be doing things. If we do that, we will never got no support from all the millions of white people that helped us during this particular time, and we cannot overlook their contributions to helping us up. Because that's in their state. We stayed in their house doing underground railroad and all these particular things. Now the move situation up there began in '78, like on down in Powelton Village, right? And the difference between Osage Avenue and Powelton Village, the people in Powelton Village supported the move organization. Once Rizzo blockaded them in for weeks on end, the neighbors got together, taking them food, taking them whatever, and everybody stood guard to make sure they wouldn't take action against them like that, right? The people in Osage Avenue, those people, you can tell from all, and I know, and I was in that area, and I don't know what this guy, he was saying he won't tell the truth about it. He's saying people won't tell the truth. He was online, he should have said it. He was on the radio, should have said it. They really thought they was better than the move people. They thought it was better. It's almost like they got what they deserve. And my brother said that one day, and I told him, I said, whoa, you can't say that. Where'd you get this from? Yeah, I mean, and I had to talk to him over amongst the times, the weeks of time, to convince him and change his mind until he started understanding what was going on. That was Louise James's house up there on Osage Avenue. And she is the sister of John Africa, right? And her son was in there, which was Frank James, right? Them people was in there, and they all died in those particular houses, and the children of Delbert Africa and all them guys was the children that died up on Osage Avenue. It's shameful and horrible that we take those, they had those bones and stuff like that, and they took and made mockery and studies and used us like we was less than human beings in all these so-called billion-dollar universities, right? Some kind of reputation, some kind of reparations, and things have to be given to these families, and they got to make an example of them that it would have never happened again, and it should have never happened. Not only just monetarily, but it says this is a shameful thing that happened in Philadelphia that was done to human beings, Philadelphia citizens. They weren't Africans, like that young man said a few minutes ago. They weren't Africans. They were Native American like we are. They were people from North Philly, West Philly, South Philly that moved down on Powelton Avenue, then moved up to Osage Avenue. Those are African Americans like us here. So it wasn't like they was people that just got transported over from Africa. He gave a little bit of a misnomer when he was saying those particular things. So I commend people for standing up and taking action. We are people that want to see truth and justice and equality for everybody. That's the people of Palestine, from those different places, and for the MOVE organization. And people like yourself, we love what you're doing. We need you, so continue to keep up the good work. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Samaz. I really appreciate your commentary there and what you were sharing. I have to agree with you 100. I think that too often we act like we're doing things on our own, that we're out here on our own, and we actually have had a lot of allies helping us through the centuries of struggle we have been in to liberate ourselves. And I feel we have a responsibility and an obligation. I mean, in many ways, we have been a beacon of how to engage in political struggle, how to liberate we have been a beacon around the world. We have given inspiration and hope to other people around the world. And I feel like we have a responsibility to continue to play that role. And I think we have, and I think I said this, we got into this conversation a few weeks ago on this show, that I actually believe that our fate and our liberation is tied to the liberation of other people. I don't think that we can really succeed and fully liberate ourselves unless everyone is free. And we have to learn from others. We have to relate to others. We may find out, like, here's a concrete example. And this is, I want to give credit to Jewish Voice for Peace, who I've had on this show before, and who actually our guest today has been a longtime member of this organization. That is an organization of Jewish people and others fighting for the liberation of Palestinians and for Palestinian human rights. And one of their campaigns was about, it's called the Deadly Exchange Campaign. And it really showed that all of these local police departments in the United States were traveling, or either traveling to Israel or inviting experts from Israel to come over and train these police departments in how to use surveillance and all of these high-tech techniques on our communities here in the United States, right? And so we are not living in isolation. We're in a global community. When you have Israeli Defense Forces or Israeli police training our police here on how to best surveil and occupy our communities, our Black communities. And I think even they traced some of the people who had been trained. The police department of Ferguson, if I believe I'm correct in that, had some of that training. So there are these global connections, and if we are aware and if we can connect with people who are also being oppressed in other countries, we can learn what those connections are, and maybe we can do a better job at breaking the systemic oppression that is actually a global phenomenon. It's not just we have our little oppression over here in the U.S. Then they have their little oppression over there. It's all connected in one way or another. So I appreciate your thoughts on all of that, Samas. Let's go to Gary in Southwest.
Hello, good evening, Amadi. Thanks for taking my call.
Good evening.
You know, I have a question. Black Lives Matter, do you know who started that organization?
I know, I can't remember exactly their names, but they're Black women.
Okay. You know, when I think about Black Lives Matter, you know, we have all these atrocities going on around the world. Like, you know, you talk about the Palestinians. My humble opinion is that you take care of home first. I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned about other people, but what about all the things that we've gone through, those of us who are heirs of, or our ancestors were once enslaved, that we built America, and we're still going through these atrocities. It's like the bombing of the Moon family, the using of their remains, being held by the University of Penn. When do we really get justice? And my opinion is, let's start at home taking care of us right here about what we're still going through today. Like, you know, you look at the news now on a daily basis, you see all the crimes, the killings, and the guns. That's not just by chance. Where are the guns coming from? Why are they getting in our, how are they getting in our community? How are the drugs getting in our community? You know, we're under attack on a constant basis. And it's just my opinion. Not that I'm not concerned about other people, because I'm for justice everywhere. But can we please take care of home? We built America, and we're still being discriminated against, treated less than human beings, and they wonder why we're walking around angry. Seriously. And we've had too many Congressional Black Caucus and all these other politicians that look like us, people who gave their lives, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers. These two of those gentlemen were murdered right in front of their families. And we still haven't progressed to where we should be. And I'm going to say this, some of us who, quote unquote, have made it to a degree, so to speak, we look down on our own people. And that's a whole nother issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to continue to be in this situation until we come together. We need to change our priorities. And I'm going to say this. You know, we're worried about what the Eagles are doing, the Sixers are doing. I'm not even going to say the Phillies. But my point is, we better pay attention. We have these poor schools that our children go into. Even before the pandemic, lead and asbestos in our children's school. Nobody did anything about it. It was no big deal. Go out to Montgomery County and see what those schools look like. When are we going to wake up and smell the coffee of how we're still being extremely suppressed or depressed, or however term you want to use, oppressed in this country? And then you look at the programming on TV like BET. Some of these programs, when I just look at them and I have to turn it off. We're being subliminally brainwashed and stereotyped on a consistent basis. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to really wake up and say enough is enough and enough is too much and change things around. I mean, we're talking about the same things all the time. I'm tired of seeing our people being gunned down in the street by police officers. You know, then when we see the film, oh, you didn't see what happened before. Yeah, we saw what happened. And every time I think about George Floyd, I'm going to end on this. This man, 40-some years, calling for his mommy. What does that tell you? I'm tired of it. You know, we should be tired of it. I'm tired of this nonsense. And it's, like I said, we better get our priorities together for real, because they have a plan for us, and it's not a plan for us to be around. But you got these privileged individuals who are in offices. They're comfortable. Congressional Black Caucus should be raising you know what. But anyway, I'm out.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate the emotion behind what you're saying. I hear the frustration. I hear the pain of what you're saying. You know, and I'm interested in figuring out new ways of thinking about how we shift it. How do we shift the conditions? I heard on the one hand you saying we have to take care of our own first. We have to take care of our own home first. I can't remember exactly the words you used. But at the same time, the frustration of the pattern and things not changing, the pattern of oppression, things not changing. And so, and people needing to wake up and be aware of what's really happening to us. And I think a lot of times people blame themselves. I think people who, you know, like watching these shows, you know, I think I just heard recently they finally took that show Cops off the air. In the wake of the George Floyd case and the George Floyd murder. But, you know, a lot of the people who were depicted on that show, like, we're watching that. A lot of the people who are depicted on the show as the criminals, like, the people who they're depicting are also the big... are also some of the biggest consumers of that show and that material, that content. And so you know, Gary, you referred to us absorbing this content and being lulled into, you know, certain kinds of consciousness or lack thereof. Let's put it that way. I think a lot of the media that people consume teaches us that we are responsible for our own condition. That and the larger culture teaches us this. That, oh, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're poor, there's something that you did or did not do to put yourself in that situation. And I think we are limited in what we see as possibilities for liberation because of the media we consume, the fact that we don't get out and interact with other people, other cultures. We might actually wake up if we can see that, oh, other people are actually dealing with the same stuff we are. I thought it was us. I thought it was black people that are inherently somehow lazy or inherently we're dealing with these things that other people aren't dealing with. If we could see that we actually have common fights and common interests, I think we would actually have more power to shift what's happening for us. So that's, you know, that's my take. That's my mantra. I'm going to probably keep saying that. And I think what we need to do is really get a roundtable, a multiracial solidarity roundtable on the show where we can have a conversation with our indigenous siblings, our Asian siblings, our Latino siblings, Jewish siblings, gay, lesbian, transgender siblings. We need to have a roundtable so we can talk about what is collective liberation about, what is the value of solidarity, how does that support the specific struggles that each of the distinct groups are dealing with that are unique to them. How does solidarity actually support each of us toward our full collective liberation? That's what I'm curious to have that conversation. So we're working to arrange that. It's going to take a while, but we're going to make it happen. Are you looking for a job? WURD has you covered. We just launched a brand new job portal featuring jobs from some of Philadelphia's leading companies and arts organizations. If you go to the portal right now, you will see jobs from WURD Radio, the Kimmel Center, Her Foods, Always Best Care, and more. Apply for a job today. Go to our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That's WURD works.com and click jobs. All right, you are listening to Solutions. We are up on our final break. And on the other side, we'll continue the conversation. We'll be right back.
Anthony Wright was wrongfully convicted of murder after he spent over 2 decades in prison. DNA exonerated him. In 2016, Carlos Vega re-prosecuted him anyway.
I was in prison, convicted of a crime that I didn't commit. Every single person that was involved was corrupt. I think about Carlos Vega, I think about the devil, I think about racism.
Vote now. Vote Krasner for DA. Paid for by Lawrence Krasner for District Attorney.
AARP is working to protect Americans 50 plus by making sure you have the latest information about the COVID-19 vaccines and the distribution plans in Pennsylvania. Just visit aarp.org/PA vaccine to learn who's eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine, when, where, and how to get it in Philadelphia and the rest of the Commonwealth, and what you might want to discuss with your doctor. That's aarp.org/PA vaccine.
Want the latest in WURD swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is your host this week, Amadi Braxton. Bishop is off. I want to just give a shout out to all of those who are joining the conversation on Facebook Live. I see Raphael out there, Haley, Stephen Alston, Antonia, Valentine King, Calvin Moody, Gary Bryant, Howard Harris. Lots of people on tonight. I love it. Sally Brown, Lucy Lou, Hallie, I said Hallie already, Harold, Gary Butler Sr. Wow, lots of great conversation happening online. Thank you all so much for participating in that way. We love it. I love to see it. Normally, Bishop is monitoring that conversation closely. Like we each are monitoring while the other person is speaking. He does a lot of the monitoring. But it's hard for me when I'm a solo flyer to do that and track all the calls and remember the content that I want to speak about. So I appreciate you all carrying on the conversation there as well. So I want to close out by just encouraging all of those who have not yet voted by mail or voted early to vote on Tuesday, May 18th, the primary day. It's an important election, even though we don't get to hear enough about who the candidates are, particularly for judge. There's all these different levels of, the judiciary that are up for election, that are open seats or seats that need to be filled, or people that need to retain their seats or want to retain their seats. And I think the station has done a good job of helping to educate us. But I kind of think there should be like government-sponsored public service announcement on all sorts of different media, leading up to election time, probably year-round, but especially leading up to election time, just about what do municipal judges do? What does common pleas court mean? What is the state Supreme Court? I mean, I think more people may understand state Supreme Court, but I think generally the general public does not understand what these different offices are. I would love to see much more education, public education about that. I would love to see more of that in the schools, because I think people often, and this is the case, this has been the case with me. You go into the voting booth, like with your eye on that one DA race or that one, if there's some other primary race that's like a more high profile race, you're focused on that. And you don't really have a sense of even how to evaluate the candidates for all these other positions, right? Whether it be comptroller or the various judgeships. So that's what I would like to see. I did get to see the debate between Krasner and Vega that was hosted on WURD this past Wednesday. How many of you all out there got to see that? I thought it was really engaging, really well done by our WURD hosts here. And I think, Troy, you were engineering that, were you not? I think you guys did a great job. I did receive, I have to say, I mean, it's no secret that, who I'm supporting for DA, and that would be Larry Krasner, but I have to just point out, I got this mailer today from Vega that I found to be so offensive and so disturbing. It is one side of it says Philly is in crisis. Has anybody seen this? Philly is in crisis. And all of the letters I in Philly is in crisis, so that's 5 I's, are all represented by different kinds of bullets. And I was just so taken aback by this ad. I found it so insensitive and so disturbing. And I think for anyone who has lost or who has not, you don't even have to have directly lost a loved one to gun violence, but just if you know someone who has been affected by gun violence in this city, and I think we all probably do, even if it's indirect, to get a flyer that has bullets on it talking about Philly is in crisis, I just found it to be so offensive, I have to say. I found it to be so insensitive to those who may have experienced gun violence to have a flyer with bullets all over it. So anyway, that was just that's a serious peeve, and yet another reason why he's not my candidate. Okay, let's go to Maurice in North Philly.
Yes, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
All right. Yeah, I agree with Gary's sentiment. Here in this country, when we built this country, we built the culture and the wealth in this country. And other foreigners came over here and benefited and counterparted off the black crisis that we hear and we face it. So now that the oppression is coming at them and in their direction, they run into the black community for support to fight this monster that we've been fighting for 400 years. We can't help no one until we come up with an economic agenda, a business agenda, an education agenda, a political agenda, and a black community agenda. We don't have nothing in place to help anyone. We have to get our own stuff together. We have to build our own leadership, our own model of what we're going to bring to the table. And then once we bring what we bring to the table, then we are in a negotiating position. How do we sit down together collectively? Because right now we sit down, we call the meeting, but we don't have a leg or an iron to throw in the fire. And at the end of the day, when they win this fight, we go back to the position we were in, which was worse than when they got here. We go back to that last position. So we got to think new ways and come up with new strategies, because what's been going on is not working. And self-evident is not working. But the leadership, excuse me?
No, finish your sentence, then I want to say something.
Leadership, leaders is not working. So you have to bring new ideas and new sectors in with a different mindset. And for us to go to the table with people that just came here, I'm not even saying they just came here, they've been here. But they weren't no part of the black community till, like I said, the oppression came. Now they understand that the white people that's here look at them as being black also, or people of color. And these are the people that use the minority bill to cultivate their agenda and their ideas and benefits, while we stay consumers. That's not right. We got to create a new movement. And you see the Democratic Party in this DA race Tuesday left us hanging.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we going to stay Democrat? But as long as we keep staying in this game, playing this game, thinking this game is only political, we're going to stay at the bottom of the barrel. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. I hear you. I will just have to say that I think people on this continent, the broader continent, and just people in this country, particularly those who live, quote unquote, south of the border, and indigenous communities. I mean, everybody was exploited to build this country. Certainly, Africans were exploited through enslavement. Other people were, genocidal acts were committed against them. Land was stolen. Everybody has a different vantage point of the capitalist colonial exploitation that made this country. And I think that if we actually came together, we could make bigger things happen than us thinking that our struggle is separate from everyone else's. Yes, we have distinct characteristics of our experience and the needs of the black community, which is, by the way, a very diverse community, so I don't want to paint it with one single brushstroke. We have our own unique, the nuances of our experience, which is distinct from others. But I think that we have a common oppressor, a common oppressive system that we can organize together better against. Because, this idea of, we have to get our own house in order first. We have to take care of our own first before we can do anything else. How many more hundreds of years are you willing to wait for that? It's been 400 years. How much more time do we need to get our house in order? That's my question. I think that we actually, if we could do better, if we recognize our common oppression and work together across our differences. And that doesn't mean that we have to all think, all be fighting for the same exact thing. But I think that we might be able to do better together. So we are coming up on the end of a very rich show, very rich conversation. I appreciate all the callers. Both Maurices, Maurice from North, Maurice from Southwest, Gary from Southwest, Samaz from North Philly, Cornelius from San Francisco, I believe a first-time caller, Calvin from Delaware, Rick from Germany, Ali from North, who was our ghost caller, who didn't get to be on the air. We missed you, Ali. But appreciate all of the conversation. I want to thank Rebecca Subar for coming on and talking about the situation in Palestine, and all of those who joined on Facebook. Next week we'll be back with Bishop Royster, grandfather Bishop Royster. Thank you, Troy, for all of your hard work and holding it down. The Envy McKee Show is up next. We will see you next week. Peace.